What would you do if the man you loved had already planned your downfall? Your money was no longer yours, and even the people around you were being turned against you. In this unforgettable suspense story, one woman must run, investigate, and outsmart a powerful family before they silence her for good. The deeper she digs, the more terrifying the truth becomes, and the next victim may already be waiting.
It was a bitter Boston autumn night, just 7 months into my pregnancy, when my perfect life shattered. My husband, Julian, a real estate magnate, was being honored at a charity gala. I should have been there, smiling on his arm, but a wave of exhaustion kept me home in our Beacon Hill brownstone. Rest up, my love, he'd murmured, his cologne a mix of success and secrets. He'd left the family iPad on the mahogany desk. I was looking for the caterer's contact when I saw a strange folder. A new project. Curious? I opened it and saw an audio file. It was his voice, speaking to a woman, Zara. The room is full of investors. I wish you were on my arm tonight to see this. My blood ran cold. She was his CFO. It had to be work. But a deep gut wrenching feeling told me my marriage was a beautifully decorated lie, and the ceiling was about to collapse. Thank you for tuning into this stream. Before I continue, I'd love to know where you are all watching from. Type your city into the chat. I love seeing how far this story reaches. As a heads up, this narrative explores intense emotional manipulation to uncover a dark truth. The names are changed, but the lesson about trusting your gut is real. The house smelled of old money and the white roses Julian sent me every week. They sat on the marble mantelpiece, a perfect picture of devotion that now felt like a taunt. Our home was a fortress of brick and glass overlooking the Charles River, a testament to his power. We had been married for 2 years, a storybook romance that began when I, Milia Vance, a respected art gallery owner, was courted by the city's most powerful developer. My husband, Julian Croft, was handsome, brilliant, and a decade older than me. His hand on my back always felt like a shield. To us, he tossed, his blue eyes sharp. To the Croft Vance legacy. I'd raise my glass of mineral water, my heart swelling with pride. Everyone said I was the lucky one. My colleagues worried I'd lose myself in his world. Then Julian appeared at one of my auctions, speaking about Renaissance art with a passion he usually saved for zoning laws, and my world folded into his. I was 38, he was 48. My family was wary of his reputation, which I brushed off as overprotective fear. When you know, you know, that's what I told myself. Tonight, the wind rattled the old windows, making the city lights dance. Our son was due in the winter. It was our perfect beginning. Then the voices from the iPad continued. It was another recording, Zara's voice sharp and clear. Julian must have been recording his private calls. Is she still at home? The thought of her finding these files makes my skin crawl. My fingers trembled as I increased the volume. He'd given me the password to his private folders once for a tax document. Login, heirloom 1850, the year our house was built. I saw my own reflection in the dark screen, a woman listening to the demolition of her own life. He was a builder, a devoted husband, my everything. I should have stopped it. I should have called him and demanded an explanation. But I had to know. I kept listening. The recordings went back months, secret meetings, coded plans. My stomach twisted. Zara wasn't just his employee, she was his co conspirator. They discussed leveraging my gallery's assets, my art collection, and the absolute ignorance of his pregnant wife. My gallery, my entire career, he called it my quaint little project. That's when my heart started to break. I listened, paralyzed. This was more than an affair. It was a hostile takeover. The trust is almost finalized, Julian said. My lawyers made sure it's ironclad. By the time the baby is here, everything will be consolidated under the Croft name. I didn't understand. Consolidated from what? Zara's next question stole the air from my lungs. And the founding director? The founding director. That was me. Pregnancies at her age are so unpredictable, Julian said, his voice devoid of emotion, especially for a woman so dedicated to her work. It would be a profound tragedy, such a talent, lost far too soon. The room felt small, suffocating. What about the first one? Zara asked. Her name was Genevieve, 41. They said she'd been lost in a sudden squall while sailing off the Cape. A freak accident. On the recording, I could hear them share a dark laugh. This wasn't a love affair. This was succession planning. My blood pounded in my ears. This is not real. You are his second act, Zara's voice said, from a recording made just yesterday. Don't mess it up like Genevieve did. I have no intention of waiting a decade just to become the next tragic Mrs. Croft. He had woven my life into his, and I had handed him the needle and thread. Tonight, hearing their plot, I knew I had to get out. I stumbled back from the desk. This is a nightmare. You're twisting their words. She'll have a wing named after her at the museum, Julian said on the recording, his tone matter of fact. The Amelia Vance collection will be her legacy. Her art, her name, her son, it will all belong to the Croft Foundation. She'll be remembered as a fragile artist. He was planning to steal my identity. I stared at the front door. Julian would be home in an hour, his face, a perfect mask of love. My name is Amelia Vance. I spent 15 years building my gallery before he ever said my name. I have poured my life into that space. This baby, he's all I have. Go, now. But how? Panic seized me. The brownstone security system, the trackers in our cars, our joint bank accounts. He had access to everything. Go to the loft, a voice in my head screamed. The old studio in the South End. It was the only place he didn't own. Go now before he comes home. Don't call anyone. Don't use any cards. Just vanish. I saw the silver framed photo on the piano. Julian and me, his hand resting on my stomach. Why am I believing a recording? I whispered. His smiling face in the photograph seemed to sneer at me. Because his first wife is dead. Before I could second guess myself, the iPad lit up with a notification. Calendar alert. Gala concludes. A chill went down my spine. The event was over. He would be on his way. I looked at the iPad, the source of this new horrifying reality. He was not the man I married. He was a predator in a tuxedo, and for the first time in my life, I understood true fear. Looking back at the screen, I saw the recording was still playing. I heard Zara say, "Text me when it's done." I didn't need to hear any more. I didn't doubt it for another second. I just ran. My coat was on the hook by the door. I grabbed it, my hands fumbling with the buttons. The city's wealthiest citizens were in that ballroom. Giving my husband a standing ovation, I walked, my steps measured, to the back staircase that led to the garage. The descent felt endless. The night valet smiled at me. "Heading out, Mrs. Croft?" I managed a nod. "Just need to pick up a painting from my old studio." He pressed the button to open the gate. The frigid Boston air was a slap in the face. I drove for what felt like an eternity, my grip tight on the wheel. I pulled over on a quiet street and shut off my phone. 5 minutes. I just sat there, my hand on my belly. I could see the reflection of the city skyline on my car's hood. "Tiring night?" the valet had asked me. "You have no idea," I whispered. I pulled onto Storrow Drive. I leaned my head on the cold glass, watching my beautiful city turn into a cage. The modern skyscrapers, the chic restaurants in the North End, the park bench where he'd first told me he loved me. The city I called home now felt like his hunting ground. I looked in my glove compartment. A few $100s of emergency cash, one spare key to my old loft. It was all that remained of my old life. The conversation was burned into my memory, the casual lies about Genevieve's accident, the cold-blooded way they planned their future empire, the way he would kiss my forehead at night and whisper, "You and I are creating a dynasty, Amelia." 2 years ago, I didn't even know Julian Croft's name. It was at a fundraiser. I was an up-and-coming gallery owner seeking patrons. He was my dashing benefactor. Now I knew he was just a shark who saw my entire existence as his next hostile takeover. Julian had stood in front of a Degas and said, "You have the rare ability to see the story behind the art." I was flattered. He had a way of making you feel like the center of the universe. We spent that first evening walking along the harbor, talking about art and ambition. He spoke sadly about the devastating loss of his first wife. He had my number before the night was over. By the fall, we were Boston's new power couple. That winter, on a trip to Nantucket, he proposed on one knee. I know it's sudden, he said, but I feel like I've been waiting for you my entire life. Let's build something permanent together, Amelia. I said yes. I was 38, pregnant, and done with building my life alone. We were married at City Hall the next week, just the two of us. We took a short trip to Martha's Vineyard. That's when he presented the documents. We were on the porch of our rental. My love, just a small bit of paperwork, Julian said, handing me the thick portfolio to establish the Croft Vance Family Trust. I watched him across my coffee cup. What's all this? He gave a casual smile. Just a routine consolidation for the family trust, love, so we can streamline our assets. Just place your thumb here. The morning fog over the bay was beautiful. Everything felt so right, so perfectly aligned between us. I touched my thumb to the tablet screen. There, I said. Perfect, Julian smiled. Now everything is officially ours. I went back to sketching designs, the view of the Golden Gate Bridge filling my thoughts. It didn't even register. Not until that evening in my studio when I saw an accidentally forwarded email about a $2 million Miami condo and saw Isabel's name as the sole owner. The realtor was a firm I'd never used. I called my wealth manager. My car pulled up to my design firm, a business I had built from the ground up. It was my identity, the only asset that was purely mine. Inside, the smell of leather samples and wood was my sanctuary. I logged into my firm's investment portal. $1.5 million, my life's work, my baby's future. I started a transfer to a private account, one Julian knew nothing about. I clicked confirm. An error popped up. Transfer denied. Account access restricted by fiduciary. A chill ran down my spine. I tried again, same message. Again. My heart sank. I dialed the bank's private client hotline. A manager answered. I need to know why my funds are frozen. I heard the soft typing on a keyboard. A short pause. Ma'am, a fiduciary hold was placed on the account this afternoon by the party with co-signatory authority. I'm the only person with that authority. More typing. Our system shows full fiduciary control was granted on May 20th to Mr. Julian Hayes. May 20th. The Tech Awards Gala, the celebratory toast, the tablet. I hadn't even glanced at the screen. No, I breathed. That can't be right. You'll have to speak with Mr. Hayes, ma'am, or visit a financial center. The connection ended. I sat in the deafening quiet of my studio, the phone feeling heavy in my hand. Isabel's name on that deed was branded in my mind. He's setting up their life. With her. The studio felt like a cage. A photo of Julian and me at a charity auction sat on my desk. He'd put it there last week, a gesture that had warmed my heart. Now it felt like a declaration of war on my own territory. I went to the window, staring out at the city lights. They blurred as the truth crashed over me. I wasn't his wife, I was his seed investor, and my company had just been liquidated. I didn't go home. I sat in my chair in the darkness until the dawn broke. At 7, I made coffee, my hands trembling. The banker's voice echoed in my head. Asterisk fiduciary control granted. On May 20th. That night at the gala, the tablet, the founder's charity pledge documents. I opened my laptop, my fingers feeling slow and foreign, and searched my inbox. I found it, an email from May 20th, from Hayes Innovations Foundation. Subject, our shared vision. I clicked it open, a single line and an attached file. My dearest Chloe, a digital version for our records. I downloaded the PDF. My stomach twisted as the document loaded. The title read, First Republic Bank, Unified Holdings and Governance Protocol. It wasn't a charity pledge, it was a hostile takeover. I scrolled through the 80-page document, my eyes losing focus. Chloe Ann Parker hereby grants Mr. Julian Hayes unconditional and irrevocable fiduciary control over account number 7702, including all powers of disbursement, transfer, and account restriction. Chloe Ann Parker hereby grants Mr. Julian Hayes complete operational authority over all assets of the Parker Design Group. This control is effective immediately and is irreversible without the notarized approval of both parties. My signature was there on the final page. I reread the fine print. The co-signatory may enact an immediate 10-day fiduciary hold on all accounts if unauthorized activity is detected without notifying the primary account holder. That's what he'd done. After his assistant forwarded me that email by mistake, he knew I'd tried to secure my assets. He used the signature I gave him while we were celebrating our child to seize my entire life. By 8:30 that morning, I was on the line with First Republic Bank. I had showered at the studio's small apartment and changed into a clean outfit. I had a plan: be rational, be precise, get this undone. The bank's wealth manager, a Mr. Chen, listened patiently. I was misled into signing this document. My husband told me it was a pledge for a new tech incubator. This fiduciary control is fraudulent, and I insist it be removed. I understand your situation, Mrs. Hayes, he replied smoothly, but without a notarized release from Mr. Hayes, there's nothing I can do. He deceived me, I pressed, my voice unsteady. If you suspect a crime has occurred, you should contact the authorities. As it stands, the 10-day hold is compliant with the agreement. When is it over? It was initiated yesterday. It will be lifted on October 3rd at 10 a.m., unless Mr. Hayes opts to renew it. 10 more days, and he could renew it indefinitely. How do I access my funds? You will require authorization from Mr. Hayes. I drove to our mansion in Pacific Heights, prepared for a confrontation. My key card was dead. The concierge intercepted me. My apologies, Mrs. Hayes. Your access was rescinded at Mr. Hayes's direction. A new Tesla pulled up to the entrance. His head of strategy, Isabel, stepped out, gave me a triumphant smirk, and strode right into my home. I'm pregnant, I had told my brother Ben, my voice filled with happiness. He'd smiled, but a familiar worry was in his eyes. Weeks later, our financial advisor flagged a $500,000 payment for beta testing hardware. Julian said it was for a stealth startup. I mentioned it to Ben, who's a lawyer. That doesn't sound right, Chloe. I couldn't find any information on the vendor. Ben called me back. It's a holding company, Chloe, registered to an Isabel Reed. My world spun as I saw her face in a photo with Julian at a company retreat. That's his head of corporate strategy, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The transaction is seamless, Ben said, his tone grim. The money was wired to a Miami real estate firm on July 12th, the day after our first ultrasound. She's the sole name? On the title, Julian planned this flawlessly. That condo is legally hers now. You'd have to prove conspiracy. The paper trail was flawless. Julian had used a holding company fronted by Isabel and funded it from their joint investment account. He told her it was a discreet founder's bonus for a recent product launch. She wasn't just a pawn, she was a co-conspirator. In the minimalist lobby of my own design firm, I was stopped by the new head of security, a man named Frank. He'd been brought in yesterday while I was at a client meeting. Following my husband Julian's instructions, he had changed the access fobs, reprogrammed the alarms, and deleted my credentials from the system. It was all sanctioned by a legal document, supported by paperwork I was now powerless to contest. I'm very sorry, Frank said again, his expression genuinely apologetic. I was too shocked to form a word. He went back to his desk. I felt lost in the vast silent space. Staring at the office I could no longer enter. I had lost everything. I walked out through the tall glass doors onto the San Francisco street. The coastal wind felt harsh. Then I saw them. A black Rivian and a dark Maybach were parked at the curb. Julian emerged from the Rivian. He didn't seem surprised, only annoyed. An older woman exited the Maybach, exactly matching Frank's description. Late 60s, a sharp silver bob, wearing a minimalist black pantsuit that likely cost more than my first studio space. Genevieve Hayes, Julian's mother. She looked me over as if I were a failed investment. Chloe, Julian began, his voice strained, but his mother cut him off, her tone like frozen steel. Mrs. Parker, she corrected. It appears you have made a significant miscalculation. Genevieve Hayes, a director at the Hayes Family Foundation, held up a tablet. You signed the controlling interest of your firm's assets over to the foundation on May 20th, she stated, her voice devoid of emotion. It is now under the sole management of Julian. On the screen was a document from her foundation, Founders Pledge and Asset Integration, San Francisco County. My name was listed as the grantor, Julian's as the fiduciary. The address was my firm's. A line item noted a transfer of assets valued at $50 million. At the bottom was a perfect digital copy of my signature, biometrically notarized, dated May 20th, 2024. That's not true, I whispered. I would never do that. Genevieve zoomed in on the signature. It has been biometrically confirmed, Mrs. Parker. The transfer is complete and legally binding. My thoughts raced back to May 20th, a Saturday. We were at the annual Tech Industry Awards Gala. He had explained he needed my signature for a major pledge to the city's new tech incubator. He had called it Building a Legacy for Our Child. I was distracted, chatting with friends about the baby, dizzy with happiness. Just sign right here, my love, he had whispered, holding out the tablet. I had signed my name without a second thought. It wasn't a legacy for our future. It was the buyout of mine. My own signature had just dismantled my life's work. You deceived me, I said to Leo. It was a strategic merger, his mother, Genevieve, corrected from across the table. Your failure to read the contract is not our problem. The deal is done. She raised her voice just enough for the staff to hear. I understand you're feeling emotional, but the Sterling Corporation is transparent in its acquisitions. This reaction is highly unprofessional. That was my design firm, I protested. I built it. You did own its assets, Genevieve said coolly, before you signed them over on June 10th. She adopted a look of pity. Clara is under immense pressure. This pregnancy is clearly taking a toll. She made it sound like a simple business transaction, painting me as the unstable one. You're a thief, I whispered, my hands shaking. Both of you. Genevieve's smile was a razor. The Sterling name is everything in Chicago. Defamation has consequences, dear. I would choose your words wisely. The others at the table became fascinated by their dinner plates. Leo, who had been silent, finally stood, his face a perfect mask of concern. Clara, please, I begged him, tell them. He slowly shook his head. Sweetheart, you're exhausted. This pregnancy is a huge strain. Don't you dare, I breathed. We think you need to rest, he said, glancing at his mother. We're all worried. Genevieve nodded, her sympathy a chilling act. There are some wonderful countryside retreats, Clara. We can book one for you. The penthouse felt like a cage. Leo came to my side. It's done, he said softly. You have no proof. Let us help. For the baby. A blast of fury overwhelmed my fear. I fled into the cold Chicago night. The proof wasn't on a screen. It was in a hidden journal. Tessa's flight to Aspen, Friday, 2 p.m. Below it, a note. Our anniversary. It was my anniversary next month, and my name wasn't on the ticket. The flight was for this afternoon. I found Arthur Monroe's studio in a converted warehouse, a different world from the gleaming Sterling Tower. He seemed stunned to see me, a ghost from his former life. He was gaunt, his tailored suit replaced with a frayed sweater, his old confidence eroded by a deep weariness. He held a tea mug like a shield. Clara, he said, his voice a rasp. He didn't rise. I sat opposite his cluttered desk. You tried to warn me, I stated. Why trust you now? Because, he said, the word full of venom, I know what Leo Sterling is capable of. He and Tessa will ruin you, just as they ruined me. My hands shielded my stomach. What did they do? Arthur laughed without humor. Her name is Tessa Reed, his brilliant protege from Yale. We were partners on the River North project. He was the salesman, I was the architect. We were set to get city approval in 2022. That fall, he used her to accuse me of stealing designs. It happened so fast, I whispered. That's how they work, Arthur said. I warned Leo she was a shark. He called me jealous. He said I was holding the firm back. I treated him like a son. A month after they ousted me, Arthur's voice was flat. They presented the River North development, my work. They called it a bold new vision. My name was never mentioned. They even tried to pin a data leak on me. A wave of sickness hit me. I started digging, Arthur said. I spoke to old colleagues. We found everyone they had forced out over the past 5 years, and we saw the pattern. He showed me his screen. It was a file with a list of 5 names. Maria Flores, Arthur said, pointing. Lead engineer, 2018, pushed out on a bogus safety violation. He scrolled. Kenji Tanaka, 2020, our top landscape designer, accused of taking kickbacks. It was all a lie. Another name. 4 brilliant designers in 7 years, all buried in scandal. All their work is now credited to Tessa, and all of them were silenced by the Sterling family legal team. I couldn't get enough air. You're his legacy. Arthur added, there was another woman before me, an engagement. She died 2 years ago, a rock climbing accident. It never made sense. He uses people, absorbs what he needs, and then they're gone. Why isn't he exposed? I asked. I tried, Arthur said, his voice hollow. I hired a lawyer in late 2022. We had documents, testimony, but the paper trail always led to Tessa. Leo stayed insulated, and his mother is a killer. What did she do? Arthur's jaw clenched. She buried us. By January of 2023, it was over. One day we were preparing a lawsuit. The next, tabloids were calling me a washed up fraud. They bankrupted me in court. I lost everything. A gag order means I can't talk about it. Then I saw your wedding announcement. I saw him with you, his hand on your stomach, and I knew you weren't a partner to be pushed aside. You were the final piece of his public image. Why didn't you warn me? He would have destroyed you, Arthur said. And after that prenup, once his Family Man Act is over, you'll be just another liability. The small studio was suffocating. The squeal of a nearby train sounded like a scream. What can I do? I asked, my voice barely audible. Arthur leaned forward. We need digital proof. Something his mother can't bury. Leo is arrogant, he said. He has a private server in his home office. I set up the original network years ago. I still have a backdoor password, but I can't get past his security. He stared at me. But you can? I shook my head, my heart racing. I can't just walk in there and copy everything. You are his wife, Clara, Arthur urged. If we don't expose him before the waterfront project is announced, he'll be untouchable. He will not stop. His words steadied me. What's on the server? I asked. Everything, Arthur promised. The original blueprints, the private emails, the digital trail proving he and Tessa plan to steal every single one of those designs, and the proof of how Genevieve made it all vanish. I closed my eyes, picturing my firm. Leo's words came back to me. It's just us against the world. Arthur was right. I could run or I could fight. My eyes opened. Tell me exactly what I need to do. We left the studio and stepped into the chilly night. The city felt menacing. Arthur walked with a tense energy. There's a diner down the street, he said. It's quiet, we can go over the plan. I nodded, my throat tight. The place was old, anonymous, and exactly what we needed. The coffee shop felt cold and impersonal. A generic tech hub cafe in downtown Seattle. A barista barely acknowledged us as we found a table. Ben ordered 2 espressos. I just wanted water. He set a sleek tablet on the polished concrete tabletop, unlocked it, and angled the screen my way. You have to see this, he said. It was a security camera feed. He pressed play. A woman's voice, crisp and calculating, echoed from the speakers. It was Sophia. It's a clip from the living room camera, Ben said softly. The system flagged it for unusual activity, but the file was on a separate cloud server. I watched, my stomach twisting. The clip was from the day he got the new funding. She was discussing strategy and how Alex's personal life created an exploitable weakness. Then a single chilling phrase made my blood run cold. He'll never suspect my loyalty clause, my own private kill switch for his equity. What does she mean? I whispered. David saw me staring at the hidden phone. The Walker Foundation, that was for our child. A trust with 8 figures Julian set up after his big tech merger. Our whole future. My voice was a ghost. A text chain on his private account. From her, Sasha. I looked up at him. It had a photo of a legal doc. A transfer agreement sent to some shell company I've never heard of. What did the text say? David asked softly. It said, "The timeline is holding, handsome. This is bigger than an affair, David. This is a hostile takeover." So what's the goal? His private server. He has a shadow portfolio, all of it firewalled. It has to be on the main network in his home office. That tech merger was supposed to launch his venture capital firm into the stratosphere. Julian promised me a seat on the board of directors, then he was always at the office. My stomach clenched. Could you ever access that network? Never, I said, my voice thin. He moved it all in house after the deal closed. Said it was for security reasons. Every time I asked, he'd tell me to stop stressing and that it wasn't good for the baby. I inhaled sharply. Then he made me sign a pile of papers. He said they were just updates for our estate plan. He brought them over the day after I told him we were expecting. A deep, cold fear began to spread through me. I never got copies. He used my pregnancy to distract me, I said, my voice breaking. He claimed the stress was bad for our child, a way to keep me away from his new COO. I pictured Alex's face, so focused, working late. Our life felt like a screenplay I'd only read. I had no one else. He would place his hand on my stomach and say, "This has to be our legacy. For our family, I have to get this right." The memory stung. I blinked hard. So what's the plan? My brother Ben pulled up a network diagram on his laptop. The Aegis data center, downtown, 300 racks. This is his virtual machine. My old firm designed their network security back in 2023. I still have the master credentials. He highlighted a specific IP block in red. "The system maintenance window is tonight," Ben said. "The overnight admins do a full reboot between 2 and 3 a.m. They won't see my access." Sophia's terminal is on the same network, but the goal is the host server. Alex has become paranoid about security since the last data breach. My robo-advisor reviews the asset reports, but it only sees surface-level data. If we move fast, we have a window. And the servers? Alex's private server needs two-factor and a biometric login. I can't provide that, but I know who can. Who? His former lead developer, a guy named David. He works for me now. Sophia had him fired for reporting a vulnerability she created. He told me everything. He gave me the root key to the offsite backup and the access protocols for Alex's ghost server. I stared at him. "You've been preparing for this?" "For a while," Ben admitted, "but you had to see it for yourself, to have no doubts. I needed a user profile he would never think to monitor. Yours." I looked at the diagram, at the red box around my husband's private server, and imagined a string of code slithering through the network. The thought was terrifying, but the last day had been terrifying. "What are we looking for?" I asked. "His other life?" Ben said his new partner, Sophia, documents everything. Memos, side deals, copies of every transfer she's made. She's pathologically meticulous and arrogant. She doesn't trust the cloud. It's all in an encrypted disk image stored in a network folder protected by a VeraCrypt container with a standard password. "You have the password?" David gave me a hint. "It's a date. We'll figure it out once we're in." I took a deep breath. This was happening. "When?" I asked. "Tonight, October 28th. The system goes down for patching at 2:15 a.m. We'll have until 4 a.m. I gave a slow, measured nod. "Let's do it." Ben closed his laptop. "One more thing." I met his eyes. "Your tech blog," Ben said, "the digital scribe. I've been monitoring their traffic. Sophia doesn't just want his money. She wants his entire company. And that includes the assets you control. Your blog is a key part of his brand. It's worth what? Nearly 2 million. Alex is your biggest sponsor." I replied, 1.8 million from the last funding round alone. Ben said, "If your credibility is destroyed, Alex has grounds to terminate the sponsorship. If he pulls out, your site goes under. Sophia can then scoop up your domain and user base for nothing through a shell company she runs." My stomach dropped. "You think she's coming for me next?" "I think you're already on her list." Ben said, "Has she been acting odd? Overly helpful? Asking specific questions about your sources?" I thought back to Sophia's call from yesterday. Her voice was sweet as syrup, but the question was sharp. "Alex was just saying your latest article seemed a bit risky. He's worried you're alienating our investors," I said, the words catching in my throat. Ben's face was grim. "That's her playbook. She creates a problem, then isolates you from the person who can solve it. We need to call him right now." Ben said, "Before she makes her story his reality." I stood up, feeling a tremor run through me. "Okay." We walked to Ben's car, a black Tesla parked outside my condo. The Seattle streets were dark and slick with rain. The city felt alien. I took out my phone and found Alex's name. "Call him," Ben said softly, "before she convinces him you're the enemy." I pressed the icon. It rang twice. Then Alex's voice, smooth and controlled. "Maya. Alex, you need to tell me what is going on. It's not a good time." I stopped on the wet pavement. "Just listen. I know what Sophia told you. I know she showed you some fake report to make it look like my blog is a liability, but she manipulated the data, Alex. It's a lie. Just like she manipulated the quarterly reports, and just like you've been manipulating me with this devoted husband act. Maya, that is enough." His tone was like a shard of ice. "I don't know what's wrong with you, if it's the pregnancy or if you and Ben are having some kind of meltdown, but you will not drag me into it. This isn't hormones," I screamed, losing my composure. "Sophia is laundering money through our crypto accounts. She's been doing it for months. She took this job to get to your company, and she is gutting it. My attorney just found something." Ben interrupted. "A crypto transfer, $200,000 from your joint wallet to an untraceable exchange in Malta, signed by you. Your private key was used." My body went numb. I never signed off on that. "It's timestamped October 26th, 2 days ago. The blockchain confirms the transfer is complete. October 26th, the day before Sophia called me." "Ben, I did not approve that." "Then explain why your key was used for the authorization." I remembered the tablet, the night we were looking at cribs online. The string of pop-ups, Alex said, were routine security updates I needed to approve. "He tricked me," I whispered, "just like with the down payment for the new house. He had me authorize a rootkit on his tablet. I thought it was for the smart home integration." "Maya, you need to hear what you're saying." Ben's voice turned clinical. "You're alleging your husband stole $200,000 from your shared assets." "Yes." "And liquidated your joint brokerage account?" "Yes." "And used your company as collateral for a high-risk loan without your knowledge?" "Yes." I was yelling now. "He used a forged digital signature. He drained our accounts. He's running a shell company. His COO is a corporate raider. Her last company is under federal investigation." "Ben, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm telling you the truth." "I can't be involved," Ben said, his voice flat. "My firm's lawyer is calling me in the morning. If you intend to pursue this, you'll need to find your own representation. But for now, you are to have no contact with Alex. I've already messaged him that you're exhausted and not thinking clearly. I'm sorry, Maya, I am, but the company comes first." The call disconnected. I stood on the sidewalk, the phone in my hand, feeling like a stone. Marcus gently took it from me. "She's already turned him against you." "Yes, Genevieve must have called him the moment I hung up." Marcus said, "She spun her own story, fed him her own version of events. By the time you called, Julian had already picked a side. It's Genevieve's classic maneuver. She isolates her target, gets their closest allies on her side, then demolishes their credibility. When you finally ask for help, you just sound crazy. She's going to destroy us," I whispered, a cold emptiness spreading inside me. Marcus nodded grimly. "Not if we find that shadow ledger first." I tried Julian's private line again, straight to voicemail. I left a frantic, rambling message, pleading with him to check the server logs, to trace the access key, to just talk to me. I knew it was useless. "We have to get inside that office," I said. "Tonight?" The original fund charter is the only document proving the firm was my idea. That's far too reckless, Marcus countered. If Genevieve is monitoring your accounts, and you know she is, she'll be expecting a desperate move. So what can I do? My voice trembled. I have nothing, Marcus. My own husband believes I'm a fraud. You have the original client portfolios, Marcus said, and tomorrow we leak them. My phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. Amelia, I know you're innocent. Meet me by the cloud gate at 10. I found something. Chloe. I stared at the screen. Who's Chloe? Marcus asked. The new junior analyst, I said. She runs projections, works with the interns. She's barely been with us a year. Can she be trusted? I considered Chloe, driven, intelligent, always noticing things others overlooked. I don't know, but she might be the only person I have left. Marcus's expression was hard. This feels like a trap, or maybe she's actually trying to help. But why would she risk her job? Perhaps she saw an anomaly in the trade records or overheard Genevieve. Marcus was skeptical. Or Genevieve is using her to draw you into the open. I looked at the message again. 10 p.m. That was in 15 minutes. I have to meet her, I said. It's the only chance I have. Then I'm going with you. I shook my head. No, if it's a setup, one of us needs to be clear of it. You're the only one who knows everything. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he nodded once. I'll be parked on the next street over. If you're not back in 20 minutes, I'm calling the authorities. He passed me a compact, heavy flashlight. The drive toward Millennium Park was tense and silent. Marcus stopped a block away. I exited the car and walked toward the dark, quiet park. The skeletal shape of the pavilion rose against the city lights. It was unnervingly still. My old building access card was useless here. The park was open but empty. Chloe, I called out softly. Silence. I walked deeper in, past the manicured gardens, and toward the designated meeting spot. The area was deserted, a faint glow coming from the polished surface of the sculpture. Chloe was standing in the shadows, holding a tablet. She was young, with a severe haircut, her face tight with anxiety. Amelia, she whispered, her voice strained. I'm so glad you came. Julian's head of compliance, a woman named Genevieve, pulled me aside at a charity gala. I heard him talking to his offshore partners, she said quietly. He mentioned a holding account, number 724. He said it was hidden in the operational budget. She slipped a cocktail napkin into my hand. That's the account's routing number. I felt you had a right to know. Men like him don't deserve to win. The password felt wrong as I entered it. Marcus's car was parked on a side street, the lights of the city reflecting on the hood. I was in. I showed him the tablet. What am I looking at? He asked. The screen displayed a hidden partition. His personal server, the offshore accounts. The password was his grandmother's birth date, 9/16/48. Marcus was shocked. How could you have known that? I heard Julian on a call with Genevieve, I explained. He referred to his secret accounts as his legacy files. Genevieve must have noticed me on the server when she came to my office. When she visited the firm, I nodded. She was there this morning. Marcus gripped the steering wheel. What was she doing there? My own fingers dug into my palms, arranging my public execution. That same morning, only 9 hours prior, I had walked into our financial firm before 9. My security badge still worked. I was still shaken from our argument the night before. The falsified compliance report, Marcus's warning, the pathetic severance check Julian had offered me. I hadn't been able to sleep. I'd checked into a bland hotel near the airport, staring at a $30,000 check, trying to plan my next move. By dawn, I was determined to show the board the authentic trade records, the diverted funds, Genevieve's entire plot. But when the elevator doors slid open, I felt a shift in the air. The main conference room was lit. I heard hushed voices, too many for a Friday morning. I walked toward the sound. A half-dozen senior traders and partners were there, even the new intern. Julian was on the large monitor, his face set like stone. And standing next to the screen, exuding a chilling composure in a sharp black suit, was Genevieve Croft. She met my eyes as I entered, her face a perfect study in neutrality. Miss Thompson, we were just reviewing your portfolio. I stopped just inside the door. What is this about? Please, take a seat. I'll stand. Genevieve's smile was a razor's edge. This is an emergency board review. As of this morning, the firm became aware of serious unauthorized trades linked to your accounts. A cold fear gripped me. What are you talking about? She slid a folder across the conference table. I didn't reach for it. One of the junior partners, David, picked it up. His eyes went wide before he looked at me with alarm. That is a documented compliance report, Genevieve said, for a $200,000 transfer to an unsanctioned offshore fund, dated last night. The trade was executed from your terminal and authorized with your unique digital key. That's a lie, I said, my voice barely audible. I never made that trade. The fund has already confirmed the receipt of the wire, Genevieve stated, her tone sharp and final. Mr. Davenport contacted me in my capacity as chief counsel with this undeniable evidence of a fiduciary breach. I have been retained to contain the damage. I looked at Julian on the monitor, but he was staring down at the table. Julian, I pleaded, you know this isn't true. You know I would never do this. Amelia! His voice was hollow. I've reviewed the documents. I've consulted with the legal team. The firm's exposure is significant. She forged my credentials. Effective immediately, Genevieve's voice cut in, clear and decisive. Amelia Thompson is terminated from her role as Chief Investment Strategist for gross misconduct. Her network access is revoked. Her trading license will be flagged for immediate review. Security will escort you out. The room was deathly quiet. I saw the faces of my colleagues. David wouldn't look at me. No one would meet my gaze. Not the traders I had mentored. Not the analysts I'd worked with for years. They fiddled with their phones and straightened papers, their eyes fixed on anything but me. You can't, I whispered at the screen. It's what the firm requires, Julian said, his voice a million miles away. A courier I didn't recognize was waiting in the lobby of our Lincoln Park condo, holding a large envelope. For Genevieve Croft, he said, looking puzzled. Julian finally met my eyes then, his look one of absolute, chilling finality. I'm sorry, Amelia, the family's holdings must be protected. The courier cleared his throat. Ma'am, I wanted to scream. I wanted to shatter the glass sculpture on the console table, to force Julian to see what his lawyer Genevieve was orchestrating. But our housekeeper was there, observing. They would all tell the same version of the story, how Amelia Thompson finally snapped, how she became unhinged, how Julian had no choice but to act. So I said nothing. The courier set the envelope on the marble tabletop. I grabbed my purse, my favorite fountain pen, a small notebook of investment strategies. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped the pen. No one said a word. I took the elevator down, the polished steel doors, reflecting a life that had just been stolen from me. I stepped out into a brisk Chicago evening, carrying the wreckage of my career. A few people passed by, a man on his phone, a distant siren, all of them oblivious as my universe imploded. I made it to the street corner and had to lean against the building's cold stone just to catch my breath. Now, sitting in Marcus's car 11 hours later, the memory felt like an open wound. He let her erase you from your own life, Marcus said softly. She needed him to do it, I answered. She needs me to look unstable. So when I revealed the truth, I just seemed like the crazy, vengeful wife he had to get rid of. Marcus's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. She's trying to delete you. Your name, your career, your entire existence. And she is succeeding. The gallery air grew thick. I steadied myself on a sculpture pedestal as a wave of nausea buckled my knees. The patrons' voices warped into a low hum. Pardon me, I whispered to no one, moving toward the restroom. My reflection in the mirror was a pale, haunted stranger. And then the realization struck me like a physical blow. 6 weeks. I was 6 weeks late. The war with Julian, Serafina's corporate attacks, it had all pushed it from my mind. My hand instinctively covered my abdomen. Oh God, not now. This was wrong. A soft knock came. Eliza, Marcus's voice was tense. Are you okay? I splashed cold water on my face, composing myself before opening the door. I'm fine. It's just a lot. We stepped back into the quiet hallway. He eyed me with deep concern. You don't look fine. I will be, I insisted. We walked out into the chilly Chicago night. A dreadful certainty washed over me. I was pregnant with the child of a man whose COO was actively trying to ruin me. After a block of silence, I finally spoke. Can we find a pharmacy? Marcus turned to me. Right now, please. He didn't ask questions, just pulled his car alongside a 24-hour pharmacy on LaSalle. The fluorescent lights inside were unforgiving. I'll be right here, Marcus said. I gave a slight nod and went in. The automatic doors hissed open. The store was quiet. I walked past the rows of snacks and souvenirs to the health section. The pregnancy tests were next to the vitamins. I grabbed two boxes, needing absolute confirmation, and went to the cashier. $39.60, he said without looking up. I paid with my private debit card. The restroom was down a narrow, sterile hall. The door wouldn't latch. My hands shook as I tore open the first box. The instructions were simple. Wait 2 minutes. A single line meant negative. Two lines meant positive. I followed the directions. I placed the test on the sink's edge and set a timer on my phone. 120 seconds. My reflection was shattered. I looked like a woman whose life had just been burned to the ground. Because it had. But if two lines appeared, my future was now chained to Julian and his predatory tech company. I tried to recall my last cycle. Late March, probably. Between the gallery launch and Serafina's legal attacks, I hadn't noticed. I was more than 3 weeks late. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Two solid blue lines. I stared, hoping it was a mistake. They were sharp and final, a devastating truth. Pregnant, maybe 7 weeks. It had to be that weekend trip to Lake Geneva, the same trip Julian swore my gallery was safe, while his COO, Serafina, called him at all hours. I'd been carrying his child for nearly 2 months. My legs gave out. I slid to the tile floor, clutching the test, and just shattered. Not tears, but raw, choking sobs. This was Julian's child, the baby of a man letting his business partner destroy my reputation. A woman who wanted everything I had, and now they could take this too. They would sue for custody and hold me captive for the next 18 years. Even worse, Serafina would see this child as another corporate asset, an heir to the company she would need to control or cast aside. I considered options I never thought I would. But my heart broke at the thought. This child didn't ask for this, neither did I. I laid a hand on my flat stomach. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry this is how it starts. But I would not let Serafina break us, not us. If I was going to have this baby, I would fight for a life free of its father's poison. I stood, wiped my face, and saw Mother in the mirror. I walked out of the pharmacy. Marcus was waiting by his car. When he saw me, his face tightened with worry. I walked toward him, my voice unsteady. He waited. Marcus, I said, I'm pregnant. A cold silence settled on the street. I saw his expression shift from shock to a sharp protective anger. Does Julian know? He asked, his voice low. No, and he can't, I answered. His tone grew insistent. If he finds out, he'll weaponize it. He will use his lawyers to declare you unstable, and he will take the child. Or he'll view the baby as a liability and just get rid of you both. You think he would hurt me? He's bankrupted people for less, Marcus said. If you had an accident, he's the mourning husband who inherits everything. The baby becomes a footnote. A deep chill settled in my bones. Then, he is never finding out, I said. Not until he is behind bars. So what's the move? He asked. I'm keeping this baby, I said, my voice gaining strength. This child will know its father was a monster, but that they were loved, and that they will never be part of his world. Marcus looked at me with respect. Your mom would be so proud. My throat tightened. I hope so. He squared his shoulders. We can't wait. To keep you both safe, we need hard evidence of his crimes. We have to get it tonight. Tonight, I repeated. His network is a fortress. It was, Marcus said, before he threw you out. Before Serafina's character assassination. And before this. He glanced at my belly. The longer we wait, the more danger you're in. We go now. Can we do this? No, he said plainly, but there are no other options. I took my old penthouse keycard from my purse. The penthouse, the private server in his office. The passcode is 941. All right, I whispered. Let's go. We got in his car and drove back toward the city. The Chicago skyline rose up before us. Inside one of those towers, on a custom server in my old home, was the proof. The hidden crypto ledgers, the fraudulent investment decks, the files on a journalist he'd silenced. I put a hand on my stomach. We are going to stop him, I whispered. By midnight, we were in his small tech office. A desk lamp cut through the darkness. It overlooked the financial district, another universe from Julian's penthouse. This was our war room. Marcus pulled a hardened drive from a locked cabinet. I built a security architecture for Julian's first platform 5 years ago, he said softly. He was the best cybersecurity analyst in Chicago. He never guessed I left a back door. He brought up a complex map of shell companies. One account was showing recent activity. He focused on the penthouse's network traffic. Encrypted ledgers, transaction logs, the ghost of a slush fund. Marcus studied the chart, his face grim as he located a vulnerability. He saw a way in. A direct attack would trigger alarms. He had to tunnel through a third-party smart appliance vendor. One shell, then another. He recognized the old code. He followed the data trail with intense focus. 4, 5. Marcus stopped at the final folder, his fingers hovering over the trackpad. It was empty. He checked the properties. The rest of the digital trail was a dead end, except for one encrypted container. Screens around him showed stock tickers, the green numbers glowing on his face. Shell corporations here, laundered investments there. The entire structure of my husband's financial empire. David motioned to the primary monitor. A single file was flagged in orange. He has a ghost ledger, he said quietly. It's completely off network. I only found it by tracing the original LLC filings. We moved through the digital maze, the clicks of his mouse echoing in the silent study. My pulse was frantic. Each action felt like a risk. A folder named Project Nightingale was the final barrier. A padlock icon blinked next to it. David stretched his fingers over the keyboard and went to work. A password prompt appeared. That folder held the proof of Julian's first big betrayal. A glass-walled office, the view stretching out over the San Francisco Bay. David scrolled through Julian's cloud storage on his secure laptop. Get the safe open, she said softly. He flicked through the images. Julian at charity galas. Julian on a panel at a tech conference. One photo gave him pause. A sleek obsidian box on the bookshelf. A gift from her grandfather. An heirloom inscribed with a quote about legacy. Amelia leaned closer as David enlarged the image. Under the inscription, nearly invisible, was a string of digits. A master key. David entered the code and the safe's digital panel lit up. It requested a 10-digit PIN. What could it be, I asked. The security hint is my first unicorn, David said, but the date he founded his firm isn't working. He typed it in. The screen blinked red. Access denied. The day of the big merger, David tried. He always called that his real start. He keyed in the numbers, read again, denied. The day he met my father, I said, that first investment launched his entire career. Or, David said, pulling up the NASDAQ archives, we could use the date that truly defines him. He looked at me and I understood. I keyed in their anniversary 0714. The encrypted drive mounted. A short list of directories materialized. The list was small but chilling. David pointed to a secure archive and a project directory. The directory was full of codenamed folders. Project Titan, Sierra Fund, APG. And then, one file with a devastatingly simple name. Amelia, 2024. A different partition was labeled Heirloom Trust. David's hands moved quickly. He started a decryption program on the archive and began copying the project directory to his encrypted drive. Then, the subdirectories. Then, the message logs. What is all this? I asked in a whisper. I have no idea, David muttered. But Liam wouldn't use this kind of security for his public assets. He started the transfer and checked the time on his watch. 9:56 p.m. His tech gala wraps up in an hour, David said. We probably have 30 minutes before his car is in the driveway. Just then, a notification appeared on Liam's synced laptop. A calendar alert. Limo arriving now. He was leaving. Now what? We work faster. David executed a rapid copy command, hiding the process behind a fake system update. Just breathe, he whispered. We both watched the thin blue progress bar creep forward. Liam was only a few miles out. He was getting so close we could hear the hum of traffic on our street. We had to erase our presence. My heart hammered against my ribs. A sickening dread pulled in my gut. I put a hand on my stomach, a primal need to shield the child I had to rescue from this man. Liam's headlights cut across the curtains. The copy finished. David pulled the drive. We were clear. He wiped the system logs and closed the terminal window, the program disappearing just as a key turned in the front door. We slipped out of the study. He was back. A thick, terrible silence fell over the house. We hid in the upstairs guest room. David let out a long breath. Let's see what he's been hiding. He plugged the drive into his laptop and disconnected from the Wi-Fi, creating a secure bubble. The laptop screen was the only source of light. I sank into a chair, trembling. We got it all, I whispered. David was quiet, his attention locked on the screen. He opened the first decrypted container. A perfectly arranged database loaded, the columns of data illuminating his features. And there, in the very first line, was a name that made my world stop. Walker Arts Foundation, 2019, asset seizure, liquidation, $62 million. He dimmed the keyboard light. The city skyline outside felt a world away, leaving just the screen's cold light. 10:45 p.m. He began to crack the message logs. The financial records appeared first, detailing a history of ruin, the strategy of a boardroom shark. David kept the primary ledger on screen. I watched as he selected the top entry. The notes were detached, cold. At the top, Walker Arts Foundation. Underneath, the brutal plan. Year 2019 method is board manipulation, public scandal. Assets acquired for $62 million. Finalized November 3rd, 2019. David's knuckles were white as he scrolled down. Sterling Tech, year 2020. Method is patent theft, market sabotage. Company absorbed for $81 million. Dissolved March 12, 2020. Next, Northgate Logistics, year 2021. Route manipulation, forced insolvency, $74 million. The corporate lawsuit was abruptly withdrawn February 8, 2021. David read on. His voice was low and tight as he listed the companies Liam had ruined. Apex Media 2020, a character assassination campaign worth $95 million. Bellwether Bio 2021, a hostile takeover that gutted them for $110 million. Triton Capital 2022, a leveraged buyout that cost them $105 million. Sickness washed over me. Every name was a friend, a colleague I admired. People who trusted Liam, who saw him as a visionary. People who made deals based on his word, who believed in his promises, and who lost everything to what they thought was bad fortune. David scrolled again. The Hawthorne Group. My vision went blurry. Year 2023. Method is spousal trust, leveraged prenup. $200 million siphoned from my own family's holdings. The internal audit was mysteriously shut down. June 15th, 2023. David stared at our family name on the monitor. His expression was pure fury. His hand froze on the trackpad. Amelia, I am so sorry, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't wait for me to reply, but opened the next file. Phoenix Hospitality, year 2024. Method is insider trading, blackmail. Assets stripped for $180 million. The transaction closed August 9th, 2024. The SEC investigation was closed September 2nd, 2024. 7 ventures, 5 years, nearly $800 million. David clicked on a separate file. It held a single contract, drafted in the same disturbingly perfect style, the Hawthorne Family Trust, to be executed upon the birth of a male heir $975 million. Hawthorne Industries voting shares 300 million. A total value over 1 billion. Transfer date set for January 17th, 2025. I gaped at the monitor. My due date. January 17th was my due date. My hand went to my belly. A son. If I gave birth to a boy, Liam would seize total control through a clause in our marriage contract. The trust, the company, everything my family had ever built would all go to him, and my family would be left with nothing. You were the final piece, Marcus murmured, his voice tight. The crown jewel. I was speechless. He closed the laptop lid and instead held up a tablet, showing a secure messaging app. A thread between Julian and Simone. Months of planning, each message a stone in the foundation of their deceit. He scrolled to the beginning. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't turn away. It was a message from Julian to her family's wealth manager on how to draft their asset merger, riddled with clauses he could later twist. The message was sent from their own home in Pacific Heights. It was utterly methodical. He wasn't just planning a takeover, he was using her own advisors to do it. The Harrison estate, Marcus said, his tone dripping with disgust. He swiped to another message, a photo attached. The founder of a biotech firm her father had backed, looking defeated as Julian finalized the hostile acquisition. Biogen, Marcus stated flatly. He showed me thread after thread. Each one was a fresh betrayal. Each one documented a decent person being systematically dismantled. When he got to the most recent chat, he paused. It was from a few weeks ago. It was from Simone. Julian needs to honor his commitments. This is my insurance policy. It was her own power play. If he dared to double-cross her, she'd release everything. I stared at her words. She was pulling his strings. Blackmail, Marcus confirmed, against Julian. If he steps out of line, she has a record proving he engineered every collapse. She's been his shadow partner for years. This was evil. This was Simone. Marcus's face was grim. She was never just his COO. She controls him. He airdropped the message logs to a secure drive, his hands trembling slightly. Then he displayed a web of Julian's offshore holdings and shell companies. He arranged the windows on the screen. This is all of it, he said. The wire transfers, the encrypted chats, the internal strategy docs he tried to scrub. It's enough to put them both away for a very long time. Then why do you look so haunted? Marcus opened the final encrypted folder from the server that I hadn't seen. It was labeled with the same cold corporate font, EV Protocol. He tapped it. A single file appeared. A confirmed booking for a private charter yacht out of Sausalito, scheduled for tonight, October 10th, 2024, for me. The plan was titled The Marina Mandate. I leaned in. Julian angled the screen slightly. Item 1, fundraiser reception, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Yacht Club. Reinforce the perfect couple narrative. Key investors will be present. Item 2, sedation, 8:45 p.m. Midazolam, 7.5 milligrams, provided by S. The main bartender will serve the specially requested mocktail. Item 3, transit, 10:30 p.m. Subject will feel faint. Return to the private yacht, the Serenity. Item 4, resolution, 11:15 p.m. Guide, subject to the stern deck for air, a 50-foot drop. A sudden wave, no indication of a struggle. Item 5, alert, morning, October 12th. J reports subject lost at sea after a dizzy spell. Coast Guard search begins. Body retrieved from the cove, deemed a tragic accident due to a pregnancy-related fainting episode. I couldn't get any air. They're planning to kill me tonight, I rasped. Marcus's face was stone. We have under 10 hours. So, what's our move? Marcus pointed to the initial on the plan. S, he said, Julian's sister? Simone, she's the chief of oncology at a major San Francisco hospital. She's the one who masterminded it. I remembered the power flickering at my father's charity event. The confusion, and Marcus slipping me a clean phone while Julian was yelling at the catering manager. That's why you said to get off the family servers, I breathed. You already knew. Marcus gave a solemn nod. I put a backdoor into Julian's private network weeks ago. I downloaded the entire data packet. I saw their whole strategy. But I left the event early. You did, Marcus agreed. which means they are now on their contingency. What's the contingency? Marcus pulled up the next file. The same detached business like language filled the screen. Phase 2. If primary goal is unrealized, activate asset leverage. Release fabricated stories of psychological instability. Use legal contacts to fast track a conservatorship hearing. Force a psychiatric evaluation. The Golden Oak Wellness Center, seized during transfer or at the center, classify as severe antepartum depression. My blood ran cold. They're going to frame me as an unfit mother, I whispered. Or have you committed, Marcus said, is the exact playbook Simone used on his first angel investor. I looked at the forged medical records, the selectively cut audio clips, the entire poisonous scheme. What can we possibly do? I asked. Marcus shut the tablet. We leak every last word of it, he said, before they get to write the narrative. Wait, let me show you the project details. Yes, they had a full-scale campaign ready to discredit me. Type deception to see the fine points. A content warning: this is a fictional scenario for awareness. If it becomes too much, please feel free to stop. But if you are still with me, you'll witness how these manipulators operate. Marcus didn't turn off the device. He stared at the display, his face pale. Show me again, I said. I have to understand it all. He turned the tablet back towards me. The Starlight Protocol. Date: November 3rd, 2024, Phase 1, Art Gala, 8 to 10 p.m. The Legion of Honor. Create the public story. The target has to be seen arguing with Jay in the main hall. A minimum of 5 prominent donors must overhear it. Phase 2, Impairment, 9:30 p.m. Asset Assis, Simone Vance, will signal the waiter to bring a calming chamomile tea. Lorazepam, 2 milligrams dissolved inside. Target will present symptoms in 15 minutes. Slurred speech, disorientation, emotional outbursts. Jay will escort the target to their car, telling onlookers she's overwrought from the pregnancy. Phase 3, relocation, 11 to 11:30 p.m. Drive to the Vance cliffside home in Big Sur, private ocean overlook. GPS coordinates 36.2724 degrees north, 121.8081 degrees west. No domestic staff on site. Zero vehicle traffic after 10 p.m. Phase 4. Positioning 11:30 to midnight. Guide the target along the cliff path to the scenic viewpoint. Path length 200 feet. Target will be sedated and compliant. Steer target toward the unfenced edge. Phase 5. Action 12:15 a.m. Provoke a fall from the cliff. A 200-foot drop onto the rocks below. Ensure the scene appears accidental. No signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds. Lorazepam is nearly impossible to detect in a standard post-mortem toxicology panel after 12 hours. A coroner's findings will almost certainly be ambiguous. Phase 6. Response, morning, November 4th. Jay will report the target missing at 9 a.m. A private search party will be hired by noon. The body will be located by 3 p.m. The county medical examiner, a former colleague of Simone's, will rule the death an unfortunate accident caused by a dizzy spell. The case will be closed within a week. I was frozen. They wrote a script for your death, Marcus said, his voice tight. Simone was going to have you drugged. Julian would have walked you down that path while you were barely aware, and then he would have pushed you and called it a terrible accident. But I left, I said. I felt strange around 9:40. I told him I needed to go home. Marcus nodded. That strange feeling is what saved you. By the time Julian saw you were gone, Phase 2 was dead. He couldn't drug you, he couldn't get you to Big Sur. Was that you? I asked. Did you have the drink swapped? Marcus simply met my eyes. It doesn't matter now, he replied. The key thing is their initial plan is ruined. So they activated Phase 2. He opened the subsequent file. Phase 2 contingency initiated November 3rd, 2024, 10:30 p.m. Target has bypassed Phase 1. Alternative reputation assault now in effect. Step 1, character assassination. Step 1, narrative control. Deploy my sister, Simone Vance, to circulate stories of Ilaura's unpredictable moods in our social circles. Step 2, asset isolation. suggest a new wealth trust, supposedly to protect our child's inheritance, containing a rider that gives me full control of her family's real estate portfolio. Obtain her signature. Step 3. Fabricate a crisis. Covertly record her emotional moments, then edit them to build a case for a mental decline. Pay off 2 junior architects to testify about her instability for a probate court motion. Step 4. Legal action. Petition for conservatorship, claiming extreme prenatal anxiety. Use our family's judicial contact to guarantee it is approved. The goal? Declare her an unfit parent to secure sole custody. Step 5. Acquisition. With Elara institutionalized, all joint assets and the real estate portfolio transferred to my control. Timeline 60 days. Estimated value $62.5 million. I couldn't form a thought. He's going to make the world believe I'm crazy, I said, my voice failing. He's going to take my child. Marcus pointed to the screen. This is a hostile takeover of your entire life, Ilara, and Simone is the strategist. She's a monster, I whispered, the text blurring before my eyes. This is her blueprint to erase me. She engineered a nearly identical character assassination against Julian's co-founder. Marcus said darkly, "We are not letting her do that to you." I saw the cold, efficient plan, a business proposal for my own destruction. "There's one more thing," Marcus said softly, clicking on a new directory. A series of encrypted chats between Simone and the family law attorney. The other file was labeled Continuity Protocol Thorn. He clicked it. A detailed profile loaded. Isla Thorn, age 29. Field, genetic sequencing. Current valuation, $300,000. Primary liabilities, a stalled research grant, significant student loan debt from MIT, and a non-compete clause with a rival firm. Status, single, professionally ambitious. Key vulnerability, seeking a visionary mentor and unlimited funding. Timeline, initial recruitment offer to be extended March 1st to 2025, approximately 4 weeks after E's mandated medical leave. Below was a draft message. Isla, this is Julian Croft. I was deeply impressed by your presentation at the symposium. As someone who invests in paradigm-shifting talent, your research resonated with me. I would be honored to acquire your current project and fund your work indefinitely at Helix Innovations. Let's discuss your future over dinner. No obligations, simply a conversation about changing the world, Julian. A cold sickness spread through my chest. He has her all lined up to take my place, I whispered. 4 weeks, Ben said, his voice grim. 4 weeks after he has you sidelined, he sends that offer. Isla will think she's found her big break. In a few years, she'll just be another asset to be managed. I saw her picture, an intense young woman beside a complex gene map, completely unaware. Someone has to warn her, I insisted. She'll get her warning, Ben said, but we have to light a fuse he can't snuff out. If Julian discredits you, his board will bury this. He gets away clean, and Isla is just the next chapter. So what do we do? Ben began packing his gear. We leak everything to the Globe, tonight, before they know what hit them. How? I know a reporter there, Ben said. She covers the dark side of the biotech industry, a total shark. She keeps all her sources on secured servers. We give it all to her. If you show her these protocols, the offshore research accounts, the whole setup for Isla, if you expose Julian and his partner to a real journalist, they can't kill the story. The entire industry will be watching. Julian's security will be on me the second I step outside. Not if the reporter comes to us, Ben said. My contact is Sarah Jenkins. She's been investigating Helix's hostile takeovers for months. If I tell her we have proof he's a predator, with internal files, the accounts, all of it, she'll come. She can get us to a safe house. A small spark of hope flickered within me. You're sure she'll help? She will when she sees this. A sharp vibration from Ben's phone made us both jump. A proximity alert from a sensor in his car. Ben's face went pale as he looked at the phone. We glanced down to the street. A man was standing near the lobby doors, tailored suit, an earpiece, his eyes locked on our building. Julian's head of security. He's watching us, Ben mouthed. Don't move. The man lifted a hand to his ear. A man on the sidewalk. My heart hammered against my ribs. He raised the phone, pointing it toward our window. I instinctively stepped back. Ben cursed under his breath. We're going now. He snatched the keys for the freight elevator. We took the service stairs down to the parking garage. We drove for 3 blocks with no headlights on before merging onto Storrow Drive. The Globe, I said. We go this afternoon and give her everything. Ben nodded. 4 p.m. His new product launch starts at the same time. You need to be ready. I clutched the encrypted drive. I had to see this through. I'm ready, I told him. He accelerated 1 block, then a second. I finally let out a breath. And then I saw them, 2 sets of headlights flashing in the rearview mirror. Ben, they're on us. 2 black SUVs. And they were gaining fast. The first vehicle pulled alongside. In the glow of the dashboard, I recognized the driver. It was Julian's security chief. The second SUV cut us off, blocking the exit. Ben swore and stomped on the brakes, but we were trapped. The tires screeched. A man in a dark suit tapped on the window. Stay here, Ben said, reaching for his phone. My door was wrenched open. A gloved hand seized my arm. I fought back, but a searing pain shot through my shoulder as it was twisted. Let her go, a woman's voice cut through the noise. Not mine. It was Sarah. I was pulled from the car and shoved against the cool metal of the hood. 2 men restrained Ben, cuffing his hands. Sarah Jenkins stepped out of the first SUV. Her expression was like ice. Sarah, please, I begged. I had to call him, she said, her tone empty. You sent those emails, Eleanor. I had no choice. Sarah held up a phone. Your messages, the corporate espionage reports, it's all right here. My husband Julian emerged from the other vehicle, his suit immaculate. He gave a small, chilling smile. Show her the rest, he said to Sarah. She swiped, then held the screen up for me. It showed a corporate injunction against Eleanor Vance, citing theft of intellectual property. Then I saw the emails. My name, my address, sending Helix trade secrets to a competitor. A wire transfer of $60,000 from my personal account to Ben. My digital signature was a perfect copy. That's not real, I said, my voice shaking. Sarah, that isn't me. The server logs are verified, Sarah said. Because Julian owns the servers, I retorted. He faked that, just like he faked the amendments to my family's trust. Sarah showed me another screen. A lien against our Beacon Hill brownstone for $300,000, paid to her own investigative firm. Filed on May 3rd, 2024, at 3:15 a.m. That requires my biometrics, Julian. I never authorized that, I whispered. Your thumbprint was the final approval, Eleanor, Julian said calmly. The system logged it. 3:15 this morning. I was asleep. He must have used my own hand to unlock the tablet as I slept. He is lying, I pleaded. Julian, he's draining the trust. Look at the holding companies. That is enough. Julian's voice was sharp. He held up an encrypted drive. Our drive. You should be resting. He plugged it into a tablet, opening a protected folder. He showed the screen to Ben. Here is the proof, Ben, the payments to Sarah. The data breaches, I shouted. Julian opened the file. Robert Miller, 2019, severance package, $200,000. Ben looked bewildered. Julian dragged the file to the trash and permanently erased it. No, I screamed. But one of the security men held me still. Julian opened another file. Dr. Chen. Deleted. That was my father's cardiologist, I gasped. He died in 2019. He was silenced, Ben. Julian paid his son to sign an NDA. Julian erased that file too. The icon vanished. Ben made a choked sound. The guard gave him a slight shove. Stop it, I yelled. Julian closed the tablet and pocketed the drive. He turned to Ben. She compromised the company's research servers, Julian said smoothly. She and your former colleague have been selling our formulas. Her login credentials are all over the access logs. They show her and this man, he gestured to Ben, downloading proprietary data after business hours. That's a federal crime. Ben stared at me, then at Julian, then at the tablet. I don't understand, Ben said. You don't have to, Julian replied. Our legal team is on it. Where are we taking them? One of the men asked. Julian checked his watch. I'm sending the address now, a private wellness retreat in the Berkshires. Annex C, separate suites. Our PR team will issue a statement tomorrow. Wait, Ben's voice shook. You're not involving the police? This is a private matter, Julian said coolly. We handle it internally. We manage the story before it gets out. It's about protecting the company, Ben. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. This is for the best. Ben hesitated, then gave a defeated nod. I tried to scream that Julian was the one we needed protection from, that it wasn't a retreat, that we were being disappeared. But a firm hand was on my arm, pulling me toward the car. Ben's eyes met mine, filled with confusion. They put us in different SUVs. A woman in nurse's scrubs was waiting for me inside. The last thing I heard was Julian's voice. Thank you, Ben. I know this is difficult. Just make sure she gets some help, Ben said. She's been under so much pressure. The door shut. The car moved forward. I don't know how long we were on the road, maybe 90 minutes. The air smelled of disinfectant. My hands were balled into fists, my nails digging into my palms. My stomach was in knots. The vehicle came to a stop. A steady hand guided me from the car. The world was a hazy dream. I was led into a modern, silent building. I heard the electronic chime of a lock. A door swung open and I was gently nudged inside. The lock clicked again behind me. The room was sterile, about 10 feet square. White walls, a sealed window with a view of a dense pine forest. No phone, no computer, just a bed and an unnerving silence. The lock hummed softly. I was a prisoner. I don't know how long I just stood there. Time became a blur. The sun set behind the trees. A whole day vanished. I sat on the bed, one hand on my stomach, refusing to let myself think about the baby, refusing to think about the web of lies Julian was spinning or where Ben was. I refused to picture Sarah at her desk, collecting her fee for my betrayal. I thought about my grandmother. I was 16 when she passed away. I remembered her strength, her voice, always calm. When they build a wall around you, she told me, find the crack in the mortar. Every wall has a weakness. I reached inside the lining of my coat. 6 a.m. They'd taken my phone and my wallet, but they missed the small flat object I'd sewn into the silk, a tiny shielded hard drive. Our old family lawyer had given it to me. For a rainy day, he'd said. I had scanned the original, unaltered trust deeds before Julian's attorneys had them revised. If he ever gets creative, you'll have the source code. I held the small device. It felt cool against my palm. The truth, not all of it, but it was a start. Tech and servers were one thing, but this was concrete. Official city blueprints, physical proof that no press release could spin away. The silence was absolute. The power was out in the archive room. I was trapped, and no one knew my location. Then a faint vibration. My personal phone tucked in a hidden fold of my maternity coat. The screen flared to life. One sliver of service. An email on a secure app. Sent at 6:05 a.m. from our private wealth manager. I read the subject line. Ethan, it began. It was addressed to my husband regarding the SR Designs wire. The real account statements were on a backup drive. The password was SRD2025. The original building financials were all there. Ethan had only wiped the main server. See the transfer. The email came from my brother. My hands shook as I read his forwarded message. Then read it again. It contained a confirmation from their joint real estate venture account. Ethan, my husband, the man I loved, the father of our unborn son. He was siphoning millions from the development company he shared with my brother, Daniel. And I knew the destination. Her, Sophia, his star interior designer, his new obsession. The hard drive Ethan used for our family photos held a hidden partition, one I was never meant to access. It detailed a strategy to have me declared unstable, to take our son. The door clicked and swung inward. Afternoon light flooded the Chicago penthouse, and I flinched. A figure was silhouetted there. Not Ethan, not his assistant. A woman I'd never seen before, young, confused. Ma'am? Her voice was hesitant. You're not supposed to be here. This wing is being prepped for a private medical evaluation. My eyes adjusted. A private nurse, maybe 30, in crisp scrubs, holding a tablet. Not one of Ethan's cronies. She didn't know his plan. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice unsteady. I was just leaving. My husband arranged the appointment. I must have gotten the time wrong. The nurse looked puzzled. Appointment? Ma'am, this suite is booked for the entire afternoon. I work for his wife, I lied. I was dropping off a portfolio for tonight's development gala. The door must have locked behind me. She noted my disheveled appearance and the fear in my eyes, but I just looked like a frantic, expectant mother. You'll have to use the main entrance, she said, her professional tone returning. It opens in 10 minutes. Of course, thank you, I muttered, sliding past her into the empty, quiet hallway. The lobby air was thick with the scent of lilies. I gasped for breath. The nurse watched me leave, a hint of suspicion on her face, but she said nothing more. I made it to the curb and checked my phone. 6:47 a.m. 1 bar of service. I called Ethan. It went to his perfectly recorded message. I tried his private number, disconnected. A deep chill settled over me. He was preparing for his award tonight, leaving me here to be managed. I called Daniel. He picked up immediately. Claire. He sounded frantic. Where are you? I've been calling you all morning. The Thorn Tower, I said. Can you come get me? Are you okay? No, I whispered, but I will be if I can get out of here now. Please hurry, I'm on my way. 5 minutes. I ended the call and collapsed onto a cold granite ledge as the tremors began. The sun reflected off the glass towers, creating long shadows across the city. In a suite high above, Ethan was likely practicing his acceptance speech. Somewhere, Sophia was approving fabric swatches for their new life. Somewhere, his sister was telling mutual friends how this pregnancy had made me so fragile. But I had the blueprints, I had Daniel's email, and I had until 8 p.m. to bring them down. 9 hours to get the final piece of evidence. 9 hours to brief my lawyer. 9 hours to make sure that when I entered that gala, I could tear down Ethan Thorne and the perfect world he had built. Daniel's car screeched to a halt at the curb. He jumped out, his face pale and tight, and pulled me into a fierce hug. What's the plan? He breathed into my ear. I held up the hard drive, showing him the file directory. It's all in here. The offshore wires, the fake psychiatric referrals, all of it. I need access to your firm's private servers, and I need to be at that gala by 7. Daniel pulled away, his financial analyst focus kicking in. How will you do it? I'm going to tell our story, I said, in front of our parents, our partners, and every powerful person in this city. Daniel gave a sharp, determined nod. Okay, let's move. We climbed into the car, he merged into the traffic and accelerated toward his office in the loop. I looked at the drive. 7:19 a.m. I had 12 hours and 41 minutes. The schedule would be unforgiving. The morning was an absolute haze. By 7:50, Daniel and I were in his minimalist office, high above Lake Michigan. The drive felt like a block of lead in my purse. I hadn't slept a minute. My phone's battery was at 5%. But I had the one thing Ethan never expected, a full accounting of his betrayal, the transfers to Sophia's Shell Corporation, and his notes on how to prove I was unfit. The office was silent. Daniel's forensic accountant, a sharp young woman named Maya, helped me crack the encryption. 40 gigabytes, the real project budgets, the original partnership contracts, and the payment records to SR Designs, and 2 audio files. The first was a recording of me, edited to make me sound delusional. The second was a call between Ethan and a doctor, coaching him on how to get me committed. His initials were on the folder. Eat 50 copies, I said. On the best paper you have. Maya nodded. It should take about an hour. As the printer started, I opened my laptop and began typing. Daniel stood near the window, a sentinel watching over Chicago. 2 emails, one to our father, one to the president of the Developers Guild. Subject: urgent financial irregularities concerning Ethan Thorne. Sent September 12th, 2024 at 8:51 a.m. Signed Daniel Miller. My name is Claire Thorne. I am the wife of Ethan Thorne. My maiden name is Claire Miller. born May 3rd, 1991. His firm is being honored tonight. Attached are two documents. One, the authentic P and L statement for the Gold Coast Tower. Two, a doctored version concealing payments to an entity named SR Designs. The difference shows a plan to embezzle over $4 million from his partnership with my brother, Daniel Miller. I also have evidence file ET-2024-312, which proves this company is owned by Sophia Russo. My husband is attempting to have me committed using falsified medical opinions. The gala keynote is at 7 p.m. at the Peninsula Hotel. Please examine this information. Claire Thorne. I attached the two financial statements and sent the messages. A minute later, a reply appeared. Re case file DGG-2024-7734 opened. Forwarded to our ethics board. We will be in touch. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. It's done. They have it. I exhaled shakily. For the first time in months, I felt sane. At 9:30, as Maya handed me the thick stacks of paper, the glass door to the office slid open. I froze. Daniel's partner, Alex, stood there, his suit a mess. His face was ashen. He looked completely shattered. Claire, he said, his voice weak. Daniel moved between us. You defended him. What are you doing here? Alex held up his hands in surrender. Because I was wrong, and you're going to need this. He spun his tablet around, displaying a forwarded email from Thorne Legal to Mr. Daniel Miller, subject Strategy for Managing Claire's Prenatal Episodes, date September 12th, 2024, 11:48 p.m. A notification showed a transfer of $350,000 was sent to an entity called SR Designs, account 501382-C. Then, 15% of my brother's company shares, valued at $500,000, was shifted to that same account at 11:55 p.m. on September 12th, 2024. Daniel's voice was like ice. I never authorized that. I never signed anything. Ethan must have copied my credentials and forged my signature, just like he did to you. I stared at the records. The same night Ethan said he was at a conference in New York, he'd stolen $350,000 and a piece of my brother's company for Sophia's new venture. I am so sorry, Claire, Daniel said. I believed his lies. I thought you had turned against me. But this morning I saw the shared account alert and checked the access history. The story he fed me was a total fabrication. The offshore accounts, the third-party audit, it was all a distraction. He made us enemies. Alex looked from me to Daniel. We have to act, he said. My lawyer is already filing to reclaim your shares, and I am going with you to that gala. I took a steadying breath and gave a slight nod. We go together. By around 2 p.m., Daniel's attorney, a tough woman named Eva Rostova, had gotten a judge to freeze the assets. The 72-hour hold was voided due to evidence of financial crimes. Alex left at 2:20 p.m., looking grim but determined. Daniel drove him directly to my condo. At 4 o'clock, the three of us stood on the steps of the hotel. It was me, Alex, and my brother Daniel. We had 2 encrypted drives, a tablet, and the raw, unvarnished truth. Alex held one of the drives. It's all there, he said. The money, the messages, the entire plot. If we walk in, it all becomes public. I know, I said. My brother Leo slid a sleek gallery catalog across the table. This is from Isabel's private viewing, he said. It proves he used shell companies to buy her entire collection. It's done, Soph. This nightmare is finally done. Forged appraisals, wire transfers to an offshore account, damning text messages. It was all there. My phone vibrated with a text from Leo. Message: confirm the wire transfers. I'm at the gala entrance. Don't start the bidding without me. Elle, I showed his wife the screen. She gave a sharp, confident nod. He's ready, she murmured. My husband's mother, Beatrice, glanced at her watch. The main auction would begin in an hour. I looked around the Chicago gallery, its walls adorned with priceless art. This was the Thorne family's empire, where my husband Ethan was treated like a prince. Tonight I was tearing it all down. We headed inside. At 8 p.m., the Thorne Gallery annual gala was in full swing. The room was packed with Chicago's wealthiest patrons, maybe 60 people gathered near the stage. Beatrice, in a stunning couture gown, held court like a queen. A banner above the stage read Thorn Gallery, a legacy of artistic integrity, 2024. At the VIP table, Ethan sat with a smug grin, a man utterly convinced of his own importance. I lingered by the entrance with Leo's wife. The tablet in my clutch felt heavy. My palms were damp. Beatrice's voice echoed from the speakers. That is because my family has always championed passion, patronage, and unwavering honesty. A few of the older donors applauded warmly. Leo's wife gave my arm a squeeze. Wait until they unveil the final piece. I nodded. At 8:50, Beatrice smiled. And now for our featured artist, whose career we are so proud to launch. I didn't wait, I simply stood and walked toward the stage. The buzz of conversation faded as all heads turned my way. Beatrice's smile vanished. I reached the large monitor used for displaying the art. An assistant tried to intercept me, but I was quicker. I plugged the tablet into the display before he could react. I have a brief presentation, I said, my voice cutting the sudden silence. How many artists has your golden boy destroyed to build his perfect collection? A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience. Beatrice stood, her face a cold mask of fury. Security, please escort my daughter-in-law out. But I was already clicking, and the first piece of evidence illuminated the screen behind her. I opened the file. The first image, a stunning photograph of Ethan with his new protege at a gallery in Paris, appeared 10 feet high. Subject line, Our Paris Triumph, 2023. A promising painter, career stalled, $80,000. A low gasp went through the crowd. Phones began to emerge, their cameras pointed at the screen. I advanced to the next image. Next was a sculptor, back in 2015. A sudden gallery closure, $120,000. I clicked again. Then a photographer, 2018. An unexpected bankruptcy for $95,000. Beatrice's voice was venomous. This is libel, pure fantasy. My son's wife is clearly unwell. I met her gaze. Then, perhaps, this will provide some context. I switched to the acquisitions folder. 9 portraits filled the screen. Each was a different talented woman. Below each was her name and a date. Sophie Renault, Anna Petrova, Maria Flores, Brenda Coffey, Diana Jones, Hannah Moss, Claire Delaney, Natalie Fletcher, and one more. The name was ID, with the date marked as pending. It was a candid shot he'd taken of me, sketching on our terrace overlooking the lake last spring. It was a lazy afternoon, a moment I barely remembered. I didn't know he was filming me. I never realized I was just his next project. The quiet nursery was suddenly filled with the sharp sound of an alert. Fear and disbelief washed over the room. My mother-in-law, Beatrice, stormed in. She grabbed the tablet from my sister-in-law's grasp, her tone dripping with disdain. "This is an obvious fake," she scoffed, pointing at the picture of Ethan with another woman, a nobody. He was meeting a potential client in March of 2023. He secured that account less than a year ago. It was a business trip. He bankrupted his last gallery partner to win that client, just as he will for our family, and Isabelle Dubois was his ticket in. A woman near the catering station began to cry softly. My sister-in-law pointed at Beatrice. "This woman is a known narcissist. She has a documented history of emotional abuse. Everything she says is a lie." My brother Leo stepped forward, handing a folder to a man from his firm. "This should make things clear," Leo said. Ethan Thorne transferred over $100,000 from their marital account last week via a holding company. The entire transaction is documented right here. The attorney's expression grew serious as he flipped through the pages. Beatrice snapped at the gallery staff. "Remove these people from my gala." But before anyone could act, the main doors opened. 4 people in sharp suits entered, their law firm's pin on their jackets. Their leader, a composed woman with a direct gaze, spoke clearly. "I am Miss Chen of Chen and Associates," her voice slicing through the tense atmosphere. "Ethan and Beatrice Thorne, you are both being served a court order to freeze all gallery and personal assets pending a criminal fraud investigation. You may contact your legal counsel. The grand hall erupted in chaos. Patrons were whispering, stealing looks at the drama. The lawyers moved toward the main stage. Beatrice's face went ashen. She leaned against a pedestal for support, but Ethan seemed unaffected. He stood, walked to a large sculpture, and picked up a heavy bronze mallet from the display. The metal gleamed under the track lighting. Stay back, he warned, his eyes fixed on me. He gestured to a nearby chair. Sit down. The threat hung in the air. My brother Leo moved to stand between Ethan and me. A twisted smile appeared on Ethan's face. You should have stayed in your pretty little world, Sophie. He took a threatening step toward me. Leo blocked his path instantly. You will not go near her. Two of Leo's colleagues appeared from the crowd. One stood directly in front of Ethan, while the other covered the side exit. Ethan stopped, realizing he was cornered. His mother, Beatrice, a powerful trustee of the city's art museum, slammed her phone onto a glass table. In a moment, our glamorous charity event had turned into a crime scene. Ethan didn't resist. He just shook with silent rage. Beatrice made a dash for her private office. She clutched her purse, her heels clacking against the polished concrete floor. Leo's associate, a woman named Maria, blocked her way. I'm afraid there isn't an exit strategy for this, she said calmly. Beatrice stopped short, her look of condescending authority finally crumbling. The gallery staff stood frozen, their expressions a mix of terror and disbelief. Their phones were down, but their eyes were recording every detail. Leo's wife held an iPad up, its screen bright. For everyone's information, she announced, her voice clear in the hushed room. For the last 60 days, my sister-in-law has retained a forensic accounting team. As of tonight, we have concrete evidence of Ethan's financial crimes and his conspiracy to defraud his wife. She swiped the screen, revealing an image of Ethan kissing a young woman in a studio. Thanks to his own digital footprint, she said with a nod at my husband, we have all we need for a divorce, citing financial fraud and infidelity, with his mother as a co-conspirator. The room was dead silent. I felt dizzy, my knees weak. Her hand on my arm was the only thing holding me up. Ethan's mother made a choked sound. His father, a respected judge, stood like stone, staring at his son with pure disgust. At 9:15, a man from the catering team stepped forward. He was young, in his early 20s, his face pale and determined. My name is Carlos Ramirez, he said, his voice shaking but clear. I'm a registrar here. I was made to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement in 2022. I saw him with her all the time, and I am willing to testify. A new wave of shocked murmurs swept the room. Beatrice shot him a look of pure hatred, but Carlos stood firm. He looked directly at me. I am so sorry. I first saw Ethan destroy an artist's career in 2017. His family always covers for him. They threatened my position, but I refused to be silent. Leo's wife nodded. Our lawyers will be in touch. Your testimony will be filed with the court. As the legal team began dispersing around 11 p.m., a young woman walked up to me. She was an artist, maybe 25, in a simple black dress. Her eyes were red as she stopped in front of me. You must be Sophie, she said softly. My name is Isabel. I got an anonymous text about an hour ago. It said I was about to be exposed as his other woman. She took a ragged breath. Ethan promised to be my patron. I actually believed him. Her hand trembled as she indicated the diamond watch on her wrist. He gave me this last night, she whispered. He said it was a symbol of our future together. My blood ran cold. That watch belonged to my grandfather. 4 months later, in November of 2024, I stood on the terrace of my new apartment, my hands resting on my 5-month pregnant belly. The baby stirred. Leo's wife had been staying with me since September, helping me manage the legal battle and get ready for motherhood. She made sure I ate and slept. We never spoke of that night. We were building what came next. Ethan's tech startup faced a federal probe into investor fraud. The press called his methods a masterclass in manipulation. Catherine's position on the museum board was revoked. Marcus Thorne's deposition was central to the settlement. He emailed me a short, supportive message. I still couldn't find the right words to write back. Olivia launched a nonprofit, the Chloe Project, offering legal aid to survivors of economic abuse. My attorney, Mr. Davies, closed his laptop. We had traced nearly $5 million Ethan had moved to hidden accounts, and the recovery process had just started. It was the first move. On September 15th, 2024, the Miller Initiative was formally established. My sister, Olivia, was its director, backed by my dearest friends. Our purpose? To give women a safe haven from this very kind of deceit. I felt the baby move, a firm nudge against my hand. I had feared I couldn't love a child from such a painful origin. I lost faith in myself. But this child wasn't his story, she was mine. Proof I could endure. She was our fresh start. This child was my hope. And so hope is what I would call her. Hope Olivia Miller. Olivia walked in, placing a warm mug of tea by my side. Her expression was gentle. Mom would be so incredibly proud of you, she murmured. I managed a faint smile. I think she'd be proud of us both. The San Francisco Bay before us was a field of distant lights. My phone buzzed with a message from a friend. Asterisk dinner next week? I have a painting for your first benefit auction. I responded, absolutely, let's build something beautiful from the ashes. I put the phone down, rested my forehead on the cold window, and for the first time in ages, felt my shoulders relax. The battle was done. My life was mine again. I now understand how I accepted the whole fantasy. I was desperate for a true family, and Ethan Sterling was a brilliant performer. He didn't just take my savings, he destroyed my trust in others. Don't be like me. Never grant anyone financial authority without your own legal representation, regardless of how much you love them. Don't dismiss your instincts because you crave the fairy tale. Don't allow a partner's family to erase you. A mother's ambition can be a dangerous force. Deceit is often packaged in charm. Catherine Sterling didn't just know about her son's affair. As his CFO, she constructed his entire fraudulent network, using her position as a weapon to ruin me. That isn't a mother's protection, it's a criminal conspiracy. I learned three things. First, demand separate legal and financial counsel. Real partnership is founded on trust, not domination. Second, the family you join may try to break you, but the family you were born into, like Olivia, is what will mend you. Third, you have a strength you cannot comprehend. Even if they take all you have, they can't own your soul. Olivia discovering those offshore accounts wasn't a fluke. It was my freedom. She helped me remember the warrior I had forgotten. If any element of my story connects with you, I need you to know that you are not isolated. What would you do if you learned your partner's mother was helping them deceive you? Your own experience has value, and if you gained strength from my struggle, I hope you will follow for more accounts of resilience. A brief clarification. While this account is based on real patterns of coercive control and financial abuse, some specifics were altered for narrative impact. If this story is not for you, we wish you luck in finding ones that are